Sometimes I'm like, am I that person that knows nothing about the book world and I'm just saying things and they're dumb? I don't know. That's me being self-conscious. Hi everyone. I thought I would just film a little video because some of you may have seen, but I announced on my Instagram that I'm actually starting a little side book selling and vintage business. It's very low key. It's called the Linen Library because I'm selling clothes and books and it goes with the Linen Librarian name. Yeah, I am mostly just going to be doing markets at our couple flea markets around Seattle for right now. My first one is at Sodo Flea on November 12th. And yeah, if people are wondering, why are you doing this, Julie? Why did you decide to sell books? Well, twofold. It was an idea I had in the summer where I wanted to at first do a books on wheels kind of thing, like build a trailer to my electric bike and pull books along and pop up at parks and sell books. That was an idea I had. And then I quickly realized I am, in the words of Cher, but not the words of Cher, Mom, I am not a rich man. So that was not something that was feasible for me to just right off the bat start and invest in and do. I don't have a lot of money to invest in this. So then I was like, okay, so I'm not going to maybe do the bike thing. That would take getting a trailer and building, and that's just, I don't have a lot of resources to do that. So one of my super good friends is a vendor at a bunch of flea markets in Seattle, and they were like talking about how, you know what, we think that there's a hole. We don't have anybody selling used books. And so I was like, I could definitely do that. I could definitely pop up at some flea markets, very low overhead, something that is totally feasible for me to do. Because I've always wanted to be able to have more freedom to share my love of reading with people. I do get to do that in my job, but not always in the way that I would like. It's a lot more on the academic side and research side. So this is kind of a passion project of just wanting to sell good books to people, be able to meet people, talk about books with people. Yeah, so that's one part. The other part is your girl loves a side hustle and needs a side hustle. Because if you haven't heard me already talk about this already, educators are highly underpaid and I live in a very expensive city. So it is hopefully a way for me to supplement my income a little bit and make my life a little bit more doable, if that makes sense. But I don't have big expectations about it. I'm, not coming at it from a cutthroat business sense. I really am just wanting to have fun and meet people and have a creative outlet of something to do. So I'm a project girly. I really, really am. If you didn't know, the beginning half of the year, I was like, I'm going to hike the John Muir Trail. And then that didn't work out because of health stuff. But I always tend to need to have some little project going on the side. So, anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So that's kind of the update and the news. But in the meantime, since I have been kind of doing that and deciding that was something I want to do, I have been acquiring more books than I usually do. As soon as I gave myself the excuse, oh, well, you're starting this used book business, you gotta get your inventory up. So I thought I'd do a video of recent acquisitions, so books that I've purchased in the last 2 months, maybe. I'm not gonna go any farther back than that. And then I also wanted to show some ARCs that I have received due to some very generous publishing houses that I want to promote. So let's get started first with the ARCs. All right, so to get started, New Directions sent me Scattered All Over the Earth by Yoko Tawada. I'm really excited to read this. It kind of is like a sci-fi of dystopian sci-fi where Japan basically doesn't exist anymore. It's called the Land of Sushi. That's what people are calling it. seems to talk a lot about language because it's a climate refugee from Japan living in Denmark and speaking a new language called Panska, a pan-Scandinavian language. So I'm just really curious to read this. I think it's going to be right up my alley and shows a lot of interest of things I like to read for the most part. So thank you, New Directions. They also sent me The Wall by Marlon Haushofer, which I talked about in this video. One of my favorite books that I read this year. So highly, highly recommend that. Okay, and then next I got some works from Dorothy Press, which I'm really excited about. I honestly didn't know about them until maybe a couple months ago, and I realized they had published some Amina Kane works. So I requested A Horse at Night by Amina Kane, which I haven't read yet, but I know Rebecca from Rebecca Eats Books just read this. And then I also got Some of Them Will Carry Me by Giada Scodelario. And both of these just look like beautiful, thinky, gorgeous books. And Dorothy Press specifically focuses on books by female authors, and they're all published in these little kind of square format. And yeah, so far I am definitely intrigued and very excited to read both of these. So thank you, Dorothy Press. Next up is a book from Restless Books, which is a publisher that does a lot of translated work, and I'm getting really into translated fiction if we haven't figured that out yet. And this is out in October, so this month, and it's called Blood Red by Gabriella Ponce. And it looks really, really good. So in a torrent of stream of consciousness fragments, the unnamed narrator of Blood Red recounts the aftermath of her failed marriage in explicit, sensual detail. She falls in and out of love, parties with her friends, skates around the city at night, does a lot of drugs, and gives into her impulses. It just seems very raw, very provocative, and it says that it's a portrayal of a woman navigating the gray or red zones of her uncertainties and paradoxical urges. So I am very, very excited to read this. So thank you so much, Restless Books. I will probably actually pick this up pretty soon, maybe next. We'll see. I'm excited. Okay, and then a book this is from New York Review of Books, actually. They very, very kindly sent me an arc of Esther Kinsky's Rombo, which I think I had mentioned before, but I read some Esther Kinsky back in August, I think. She's a German writer, so I believe this is translated from the German. Yes. And this follows about life in the aftermath of two severe earthquakes in September 1976 in northeastern Italy. So I just really like her writing, and I'm excited to dive into this as well. So thank you so much, New York Review of Books, for this guy, because it looks really, really good. I just think that Esther Kinsky has a really great way of incorporating a sense of place into her novels and really focusing on the geography of the place she's writing about. And I find that really magical in writing. So definitely gonna pick this one up soon. Okay, and this next one, no, I did not actually receive this arc from a publisher. But I did find it in a little free library by my house, and I was like, hello, who are you? Why don't we know each other? But this is out by Seven Stories Press, and this is Getting Lost by Annie Ernaux, which we know is our new Nobel Prize for Literature award winner. So this just came out in September, so last month, and yeah, this looks like her diary of where she had a secret love affair with a younger married man who was a Russian diplomat. So very good. I guess her book Simple Passion, her novel, was based on this. So super excited to read this. Can't believe I found it in a little free library. Very, very cool. All right, so those are all the arcs I have received. Thank you so much to all these wonderful publishers. I feel so spoiled. So very excited to dive into all of those. Anyway, so let's start with some new releases. The first case is a new re-release. So this is O Caledonia, a novel by Elspeth Barker. Apparently it was written in the 90s, I think, and then went out of print. And Simon and Schuster, hold on, who are you? Yep, Simon and Schuster has republished it. I love the cover. It seems like a perfect fall read. It's been blurbed by Allie Smith, Maggie O'Farrell, and it is about, let's see, it's a murder story about a 16-year-old girl who's discovered murdered in a Scottish Highlands home. It's very atmospheric, rich, dark, gothic. I'm very excited to read this and learn more. So that's a new release. Kind of new release-ish-esque is I got a subscription to Astra magazine, which is a new literary magazine that I'm really curious to know more about. This is the issue 2 Filth. I was hoping to get issue 1 when I signed up, but I think it was too late. But this is pretty cool. I mean, I was intrigued because it had stories by Elif Batuman. I think the first issue had work by Otessa Moshfegh. This also has Sheila Heti in here, Raven Leilani. So I am excited to see more of this. I don't know if it's connected to Astra Publishing House exactly, but this one is all about filth, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of gross. Definitely some interesting, sexy, gross stuff going on in here. So check this out. Very fun new literary magazine. Yeah. So next I thought I'd show you some Nerbies, some New York Review of Books that I got. All of these I found at used bookstores. Here they all are with those classic spines. First is Sleepless Nights by Elizabeth Hardwick. I believe this is sort of a book of essays about Elizabeth Hardwick looking back at her life and her time in New York as a writer. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Kind of is giving me like Joan Didion, Eve Babbitt's kind of vibes. So we'll see. And then I'm super excited. I actually had finished checking out at this one bookstore. And then I saw The Door and I went back. Like I saw it on a display in the front and I said, oh, just kidding. I also have to get this one. So then I got The Door by Magda Sasbo. As we know, I read Abigail back in August and I loved it. This one seems just as amazing. Batuman's Little Idiot kind of raved about this one recently, so I'm really excited to get into it. We have super similar reading tastes. And this is a book that explores a relationship between two very different women. Magda is a writer, educated, married to an academic, and Emerence is her maid, I believe, and is a peasant, illiterate, and passive, abrupt, seemingly ageless. She's Magda's housekeeper, and has taken control over Magda's household, becoming indispensable to her. So it's about their relationship, and it sounds kind of weirdly spooky, and knowing this author, it's just going to be great. And it has an introduction by Allie Smith, so very excited to get to this one. And then I got two that I don't know this author or much about him. Jean Giono, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I believe they are a French writer from the early to mid 20th century. And I was mostly intrigued by Hill, which I think is how they got this was their debut novel. And it's basically just follows 4 houses and their residents in this province, a French province in the 1800s, I think. So it sounds really interesting. And then this one is again set in the 1800s and follows a fictional tale of Herman Melville crossing the Atlantic and how he gets his inspiration from Moby Dick. So both of these sounded really interesting to me, and I just picked them up at a bookstore this week. It's a great little bookstore on Bainbridge Island that has used books and records. So yeah, these were my recent acquisitions of New York Review of Books titles. Okay, next I have kind of gotten a wonderful curated stack of 20th century women writers that I am really excited to read. Some of them I've already read, some of them are new to me, and I'm just really excited to dive into all of these. So I'm going to start with the oldest to newest book, but every one of these was published during the 20th century. So the first is Nella Larsen's Passing. This has gotten a lot more buzz lately due to Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half is kind of what this is based on. And then they made a Netflix film adaptation of this book. I have not seen the film, but I have read The Vanishing Half, and I'm very excited to get into this. It was published in, I think, 1920 something, which is pretty cool. So Nella Larsen's Passing. And then this was brought to my attention by Lindsay, who, this is their channel. They've been doing some really awesome book content. They also are an artist, an herbalist. I just love that I have discovered who they are. It's been fun to watch their videos, but they mentioned picking up the book Nightwood by Dunya Barnes, and this is actually a book of, this is a work, I guess you could say, queer fiction, lesbian fiction, written in the mid-1930s, which I think is really cool, and was very avant-garde at the time, and I'm really excited to read it. I gasped when I saw this copy at a used bookstore because I was like, this is the exact copy I'm looking for, and very excited to get into it. And then next, I picked up The Heart is a Lonely Hunter at a wonderful little used bookstore in Port Townsend, Washington. Highly recommend it. I don't remember the name of it, but you'll find it. It's on the main street. It's, I think, the biggest bookstore in town. And this is, as we know, very much a modern classic. It was published in 1940. Southern Gothic. It was her first novel. She was only 23 years old when it was published, and I actually have not read any McCullers. I have only read about her, so I'm really, really excited to read this one as well. Okay, so this next one is Spring and Autumn Annals by Diane Di Prima. And I bought this book at Drink Books, which is a really great book wine shop in Seattle. Highly, highly recommend. Focuses very much on literary fiction, thinky women writers. So good. And this is a story of the author's journals, who was a poet living in New York City in the 1960s. She was a Warhol factory member, a dancer, and it's about her friend who had a tragic death of suicide at the age of 29. And this is her journals of her daily practice of writing after that. It was published by City Light Books, I think recently, but I believe, it's her journal entries from 1964. So very excited to read this. All right, and then I picked up Toni Morrison's Sula. I also got this on Bay Bridge Island just the other day, and look at this cover. I feel like CJ reads recently, it was either this book or another Toni Morrison of these sort of like vintage classics, plume fiction, that's what it's called. Plume contemporary fiction covers of these Toni Morrison novels, and I saw it and was like, oh, this is perfect. So I have only read Beloved by Toni Morrison, and I am just aching to read more, so we'll be picking up Sula soon. This was published in the 70s, I believe. So this was published in 1973, so excited to read this one. All right, and then this is a new author to me, and I'm trying to remember how I discovered her. I want to say it was maybe through something Claire Louise Bennett wrote, maybe through Checkout 19. She mentioned so many authors in that book. I'm not totally sure where I got this author, but I just know I've added it to my TBR, and then I got a copy on Thrift Books. But this is called No Place on Earth by Christa Wolf. And Christa Wolf was a German writer who lived in East Germany under the Soviet occupation, and her work really reflects that. This is sort of a historical fiction for the time. It was written in the 70s, but follows two poets or are they artists? Yeah, two poets in the kind of early 1800s in Germany. So definitely interested in reading this. I've heard her writing is just gorgeous. Okay, and another fun one that I feel like is floating around in the BookTube Bookstagram universe is Hotel du Lac by Anita Bruckner. This won the Booker Prize back in the 80s, and it's about a romance novelist who escapes to a hotel after her relationship has gone awry. And she takes refuge in a hotel in Switzerland. Very stoked to get to this one. All right, another one I picked up was Jeanette Winterson's Oranges Are the Only Fruit. This is also like queer canon book that I really want to read. I actually have only ever read part of Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson. I need to get it together and read more of her stuff. And then next I have Lucy by Jamaica Kincaid, which I read Small Things Like These not too long ago. Really, really loved it. And Lucy, I've heard, is a wonderful story about New York City. It's about a girl from the West Indies who comes to New York to be a au pair for the most part, I think. Goes to be an au pair for a rich family in New York, and I'm really excited to read this. If it's anything like Small Things Like These, it's going to be so cutting and hold nothing back, critiquing whiteness and class in a way that I think is super smart. So excited to read this. Okay, the last two sort of 20th century-ish books that I've gotten about women writers are this amazing anthology of May Sarton's works. This is an anthology of journals, novels, and poetry. I don't know, I just got this yesterday, so I haven't had time to go into this, but it has, let's see what's in here. So it has a lot of her poetry, which I'm really excited to read. And then I think it has excerpts from many of her autobiographical writings and excerpts from her fiction. So really happy to have found this. It was only $8. I was like, let's go. Yeah, and then I found Lucia Berlin's A Manual for Cleaning Women. I know this was re-released lately, but the majority of her writings in this are from the mid to late 20th century. This was sort of published after her death and has a lot of different stories of her. So I'm really excited to read this. It's been on my list for a long time. Okay, and then two more contemporary books that I have acquired in the last few months has been Pew by Catherine Lacey. This is, I've heard, a weird little book about someone who comes into a small town. They're very nondescript, they're genderless, they're just this person living in their small town that they have named Pew, who is sort of shuttled from house to house of this very small southern town. It seems like it has some weird religious bent. It seems a little eerie, a little spooky. Definitely excited to read this. I've heard the writing is really good as well. And then I've picked up Tin Man by Sarah Winman. And this seems like kind of a queer I wouldn't say romance, but follows a queer love story. It says this is an almost love story, but it's not as simple as that, following two boys who grew up in Oxford together and then reunite when they are older. So I've heard this is a really beautiful one as well. So that is everything that I have mostly bought myself in the last few months. Has not been great for the pocketbook, but has been fun for me and my life. So those are all the books I got going on. I'm so excited to read all of them. I have a TBR that is beyond endless. I have more books in my apartment that I haven't read than I have read, because usually once I've read something, I either give it away, in this case now I'll be trying to sell it or share it with other people, or I do keep it. Maybe I'll do a bookshelf tour. That is something I haven't done yet, mostly because I'm embarrassed to show how many of the books in my apartment are the books I haven't read, because I actually don't hold on to that many once I've read them. So I don't know if anyone else is like that. I do have some that I want to hold on to usually. But some I'm usually like happy to give away, or I do a lot of trading in at this one used bookstore. I actually just did a big trade-in the other day. So a lot of these books I actually did buy. I didn't necessarily have to pay for because I'm doing trade-ins. So that's just kind of how I am. I'm like that way with clothes. Like I just do a lot of trading and swapping, and that's just kind of, I like to keep it fresh. But anyway, those are my new acquisitions. Right now, I am currently reading The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I'm more than halfway through, kind of almost done. I am fully loving it, fully engrossed. It's a beautiful read. It's like haunting and dark, but I'm having a lot of fun because I just love how Maggie O'Farrell writes. Like, damn, this woman can write a novel. Like, I'm just having a good time. After I did Jessica's Tiny Book Stack Challenge, which I didn't end up reading that much because it fell during the 2 weekends where two of my best friends got married, and I went to their bachelorette party the weekend before, and it was just like chaos. So I did not read very much, so not much to report there, but felt really good to dive into a thick, chunky book after reading a bunch of tinies. So yeah, this is so good. And I'll probably check in a little bit later, maybe do a wrap up or a vlog or something. But I thought for now, I haven't really been in the mood to vlog the last couple weeks. So for now, here's a little video on just recent acquisitions. I hope you liked it. And hope everyone's reading's going well. And thank you to everybody who has said nice things and is following the Linen Library on Instagram. And if you're local to Seattle, feel free to come by on November 12th at the Soto Flea. I would be happy to meet you and sell you some books just because I think it'll be fun. Yeah. Okay, I'll keep you all updated on that project. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Okay, bye.